Welcome back to the third lecture in the series of research methodology. In the previous lesson, we have studied in detail the defining of a research problem. But once we have established the what of the study, next we need to do is to come to how of the study. And this how of the study is answered by research design. But before we move on to this topic, let us ask you a question. Suppose a person wants to construct his home. For this, he has identified a nice location too. But do you think that without a blueprint of the constructional home, the home can come as desired? Definitely. The answer to this is no. In research methodology too, it has been found by research scholars and managers that most studies do not result in any significant findings because of a faulty research design. Most researchers feel that once the problem is identified and hypotheses are made, one can go ahead and collect the data on a specified group or sample and then analyze it using statistical tests. However, unless the formulated research problem and the study hypothesis is tested through a well-defined plan, then the answers and the results are going to be merely based on hit and trial method rather than resting on any sound logic. An author of a paper, while reviewing the academic articles for a journal, stated that 20% of the reasons for rejection of research papers was inadequate study design. Our research paper do not get rejected because of the lack in the research design. So, let's understand and contemplate on the importance and the necessity of research design. So, in this lesson, we'll get to know what is research design, what are the essential elements of research design, what are different types of research design, and then we'll take some insight into basic principles of experimental design. And after this, we will conclude the lesson with the features of research design. So, let's begin with the definition of research design. Research design is the framework of research methods and techniques chosen by a researcher. The design allows researchers to take in on research methods that are suitable for the subject matter and set up their studies up for success. The function of a research design is to ensure that the evidence obtained enables one to effectively address the research problem as unambiguously as possible. That is to say, the research design is the conceptual structure within which research is conducted. It constitutes the blueprint for the collection, measurement, and analysis of data. As such, the design includes an outline of what the researcher will do from writing the hypothesis and its operational implications to the final analysis of the data. More explicitly, the design decisions happen to be in respect of what is the study all about? What is the study being made? Where will the study be carried out? What type of data is required? Where can the required data be found? What will be the sample design? What techniques of data collection can be used? How will data be analyzed? And in what style will the report be prepared? Keeping in view the above stated design decisions, one can broadly split the research design into 4 parts. The first part is the sampling design, which deals with the method of selecting items to be observed for the given study. Then comes the observational design that relates to the conditions under which the observations are to be made. And then there is the statistical design, which concerns with the analysis of the questions, number of questions from which the information needs to be gathered, etc. And then the last is the operational design, which deals with the techniques by which the procedures specified in the sampling, statistical and observational designs can be carried out. So, with these, the important features of research design may be outlined as follows. One of the essential features of research design is that it constitutes a plan that identifies the types and sources of information required for the research problem. It constitutes a strategy that specifies the methods of data collection and analysis which would be adopted. And thirdly, it also specifies the time period of research and monetary budget involved in conducting the study, which comprise the two major constraints of undertaking any research. So, with these features of research design at the back of our mind, let's move on to the categorization of research designs. The different research designs are as follows. Starting with the historical design, the purpose of a historical research design is to collect, verify, and synthesize evidence from the past to establish facts that defend or refute our hypothesis. In this design, we make use of secondary sources and a variety of primary documentary evidences such as logs, diaries, official reports, records, archives, and non-textual information like maps, pictures, inscriptions, etc. The limitation of this design is that the sources must be authentic and valid. Then, one of the majorly used research design is called as exploratory research design. The primary objective of exploratory research design is to provide insights into and an understanding of phenomena. It aims to explore and get clarity on problem situation. It is used in instances where the subject of study cannot be measured in a quantitative manner. That is to say, exploratory designs are the simplest and most flexible structured designs. As the name suggests, the basic objective of the study is to explore and obtain clarity about the problem situation. It is flexible in its approach and mostly involves a qualitative investigation. In this, the sample size is not strictly representative, and at times it might only involve unstructured interviews with a couple of subject experts. The essential purpose of the study is basically to define and understand the research problem that is to be investigated, to explore and evaluate the diverse and multiple research opportunities, to assist in the development and formulation of research hypotheses, to define the variables and constructs under the study, to identify the possible nature of relationships that might exist between variables under the study, and to explore the external factors and variables that might impact the research. In this design, the researcher can make use of secondary resource analysis, case study method, expert opinion, and focused group discussions. Then comes the diagnostic research design. In diagnostic design, the researcher is looking to evaluate the underlying cause of a specific topic or phenomenon. This method helps one learn about more factors that create troublesome situations. This design has three parts. First, it takes into account the inception of the issue, then it goes with the diagnosis of the issue, and ultimately the issue is sorted via the research analysis. In a descriptive design, a researcher is solely interested in describing the situation or case under their research study. It is a design which is created by gathering, analyzing, and presenting collected data to provide a comprehensive and detailed explanation of the phenomenon under study. So, the difference between exploratory and research or diagnostic type is basically as follows. The overall design in exploratory research is flexible in nature, while in diagnostic or descriptive it is rigid. As far as sampling design is considered, we make use of non-probabilistic sampling procedures while designing the exploratory research design. It can include judgment sampling, purposive sampling, whereas in descriptive we make use of probabilistic sampling design. So we can employ stratified sampling, simple random sampling, etc. Then statistical design, there is no pre-planned design for analysis with respect to exploratory designs. However, we have a pre-planned analysis when we take into account the descriptive or diagnostic research design. Further, unstructured instruments for data collection is used in research design with respect to exploratory method. We'll be taking up in detail these unstructured instruments of data in the next section, while for descriptive or diagnostic it is structured manner. The last is the operational design. As far as exploratory is considered, no fixed decision about the operational procedures exist in exploratory design, whereas we have advanced decision making procedures when descriptive or diagnostic research design is taken into consideration. Then, after these major classification of research design into exploratory design and diagnostic, we have another classification which states that research design can be classified into qualitative research design or quantitative research design. Qualitative research design determines the relationships between collected data. Qualitative research designs determine the relationships between collected data and observation based on mathematical calculations. Qualitative research design determines the relationship between the collected data and observations based on mathematical calculations. In this, one may go with non-parametric hypothesis. For example, the impact of grooming class on personality can be portrayed by qualitative research design. Then we have quantitative research design. In quantitative research design, the cases of statistical conclusions are met. The data is collected and analyzed on the basis of statistical tools and techniques. These quantitative research designs can further be divided into experimental and non-experimental designs. Non-experimental design is the one that lacks the treatment of an independent variable, control of extraneous variables through random assignment or both. One of the famous and most used non-experimental research is correlation research design. Correlation research is a non-experimental research design that helps researchers establish a relationship between two closely connected variables. This type of research requires two different groups. The advantage of this type of research design is that there is no assumption while evaluating a relationship between two variables, and statistical analysis technique can calculate the relationship between them. For example, the understanding of the relation between demographic and say some other attribute like voting preference can be portrayed using correlation research designs. One of the major branch of research design is catered by experimental research design. Experimental research design establishes a relationship between the cause and effect of a situation. It is a causal design where one observes the impact caused by an independent variable on the dependent variable. In this, we can start with the concepts of design of experiments. Experimental design or design of experiment is a blueprint of the procedure that enables the researcher to maintain control over factors that may affect the result of an experiment. In doing this, the researcher attempts to determine or predict what may occur. Experimental research is often used where there is time priority in a causal relationship. There is consistency in a causal relationship and the magnitude of the correlation is great. The classical experimental design specifies an experimental group and a control group. The independent variable is administered to the experimental group and not to the control group. And both groups are measured on same dependent variable. Subsequent experimental designs have been used for more groups and more measurements over longer periods. In these, we can have cases like suppose we want to understand the effect of fertilizers on different lands. Then such type of causal relationships can be dealt with the design of experiments. When we are considering the design of experiments, then there are primarily 4 types of design of experiments or experimental designs. First is pre-experimental designs. These are the designs wherein observation is taken after the application of the treatment. This also includes one group pre-test, post-test design when one observation is taken prior to the application of the treatment and the other after the application of the treatment and is compared with the static group. The experiment group is subjected to treatment and a post-test measurement is taken, and in control group, measure is taken at the time when it was done for experimental group. These designs do not make use of any randomization procedures to control the extraneous variables. Then the second one are the quasi-experimental designs. In these designs, the researcher can control when measurements are taken and in whom they are taken. However, this design lacks complete control of scheduling of treatment and also lacks the ability to randomize the testing units which are getting exposed to the treatments. Then the third are the true experimental designs. In these designs, researchers can randomly assign test units and treatments to an experimental group. Here, The researcher is able to eliminate the effect of extraneous variable from the experimental and control group. A point worth mentioning over here is the definition of extraneous variables. Extraneous variables are those variables which are not independent variable but could affect the result of the experiment. And then we have last in the experimental designs, which is statistical designs. These designs allow for statistical control and analysis of external variables. The main advantages of statistical designs are the effect of more than one level of independent variable on the dependent variable can be analyzed via this design procedure. The effect of more than one independent variable can also be examined. The effect of specific extraneous variables can be controlled in this, and that is why they are studied widely in the field of research methodology. There are majorly three designs that forms the part of statistical design. One is called as CRD or complete randomized design. Second is called as RBD or randomized block design. And third is the factorial design, which takes into account the interaction between the variables. Now, before taking into consideration what these three designs are, there are certain concepts which are related to design of experiments, and these concepts are being utilized in taking up the research designs that are based on the experimental design structures. These are basically the three principles of design of experiments. Starting with randomization, this is the first principle of an experimental design. This process randomly assigns treatments to the experimental units. It implies that every allotment of treatment ends up with the same probability. When dividing research participants into the different groups, random assignment ensures that every participant has an equal chance of being assigned to both the experimental group and the control group. Randomization purpose is to remove bias and other sources of extraneous variation which are uncontrollable. For example, suppose we have a college, and in that college many students are there. Now, when we are considering the design of experimental structure, then we take up the form as in where we are randomly selecting the students and putting them in different classes. Then on these different classes, we are giving them the treatments as in the teaching, and then we are analyzing the results. So this type of structure is the randomization process in design of experiment. Then the second part is the replication. This is the second principle of experimental design. It is a repetition of the basic experiment. In all experiments, some variation exists because the experimental units, such as individuals or plots of land, cannot be physically identical. This variation is removable by using a number of experimental units. Therefore, the basic treatment is performed repeatedly. Researchers repeat the same studies on different research participants to see if they produce the same statistical significant result each time or not. So, using replication, we basically adds on to the efficiency of the experimental design. Replication helps in obtaining an accurate estimate of the experimental error, decreasing the experimental error, thereby increasing precision and obtaining a more precise estimate of the treatment effect. Now consider the example wherein we were dividing the entire students into different classes. Now, in these different classes, if we further bifurcate the students by the terms of their divisions, then that is called as the local control process. So, randomization and replication do not remove all extraneous sources of variation. A more refined experimental technique is required for that. A design should be chosen such that all the extraneous sources of variation can come under the control. For this purpose, local control, which refers to the amount of balancing, blocking, and grouping of the experimental units, is used. So, when we are grouping the participants in terms of the divisions, then we are controlling the more extraneous sources of variation. Balancing implies that the treatment should be assigned to the experimental units such that the result is a balanced arrangement of treatments. Blocking means that similar experimental units should be collected together to form a relatively homogeneous group. Here, the concept of stratified sampling can take place. The main purpose of local control is to increase the efficiency of experimental design by minimizing the experimental error. In this case, local control should not be confused with the word control. Control in experimental design is used for treatment. It does not receive any treatment, but the effectiveness of other treatments should be found. So, based on these three principles of design of experiments, the statistical designs are classified into CRD, BRD, and factorial design. CRD or complete randomized design is used when a researcher is investigating the effect of one independent variable on the dependent variable. The independent variable is required to be measured in nominal scale, that is, it should be in number of categories. CRD lacks the concept of local control, so it is done by the process of Anova, that is, analysis of variance. Then we have BRD, that is block randomized design, which is better in terms of accuracy as compared to CRD, because in randomized block design, it is possible to separate the influence of one extraneous variable on a particular dependent variable, thereby providing a clear picture of the impact of treatment on test units. So basically, when we were dividing the entire class into different blocks or stratas, therein we can expect that more accuracy comes into our ANOVA model, and that ANOVA model is called as two-way ANOVA model. And these two-way ANOVA models are difficult to compute on one hand, but give better results in terms of accuracy as compared to one-way ANOVA or CRD. Then the last is the factorial design, wherein two-way ANOVA is employed, but here this design allows the interaction between two variables. So it is complicated procedure, but it gives better results when we are comparing the means of multiple populations. So this was all related to the research designs. One should be careful while taking up the research designs and should focus on the features of research design, which says that they should be neutral, they should be reliable, they should be validated, and they should be based on a generalization concept. So neutrality, that means when you start up your study, you may have to make assumptions about the data you expect to collect. The results projected in the research design should be free from bias and should be neutral. Then understanding the opinions about the final evaluated solutions and scores and conclusion from multiple individuals and consider those who agree with the derived results. The research designs should be reliable, that is, with regularly conducting the research, the researcher involved expects similar results every time. So, the design should indicate how to form research questions to ensure the standardization of the results. Validity. There are multiple measuring tools available. However, the only correct measuring tools are those which help a researcher in gauging results according to the objective of the research. The questionnaire developed from the design should be validated using the correct measuring tools. And then finally, we have the generalization feature of a research design, which says that outcome of the design should apply to a population and not just a restricted sample. A generalized design implies that the survey can be conducted on any part of a population with similar accuracy. So, with these features of research design, we conclude the chapter of research designs in research methodology. Wish you all a happy learning.